Welcome back to Super Kawaii Mama Says. I'm Candice DeVille and today I'm answering for you one big question, which is curly hair, naturally curly hair and achieving vintage styles. I was specifically sent this question by Mona D, who has naturally curly hair and has a lot of trouble doing vintage styles on her hair. She says that she needs to straighten her hair in order to achieve any vintage styles. I asked Mona to send me a picture of her hair so I had a bit of an idea as to what she meant by naturally curly hair, because of course we all have different variations on that. I myself have what I'd call a wave, others have a very tight curl, spiral curl, ringlets and so on. The main thing to remember is if you have naturally curly hair, you're actually already ahead of the game when it comes to vintage styling.
So here's Mona's hair. You can see that it has a fantastic curl to it and a lot of body there. She's told me it's quite thin. However, the thing to remember is it depends on how you want to style it. There are so many amazing vintage styles that look fantastic with natural curl. These rely heavily on how it's cut and how you brush that out. Remember that choosing vintage styles doesn't come down to just pick one you like and it will work for you. You need to find the style that works for your hair type and for your face shape. There are so many options.
It wasn't until the 1970s that straight hair became en vogue. So prior to that, the idea of having curly hair was much more covetable. Hence the reason that ladies would go and have their hair permanently waved.
Some of you, or your grandmas, may remember the trauma of the early salon perm. However, the popularity of the at-home perm, such as the Tony perm, meant that women could have their hair curly or waved so that their sets would last a lot longer and be successful.
The perm, or the permanent wave, wasn't designed as a wash and wear perm. So for those of you that remember the tragedies of the 80s perm, this is not what we're talking about. We're talking about giving a movement and a wave to the hair that enabled the women to actually then set and style their hair into the shape that they wanted. It seems that there's quite a misconception out there today that if you get a perm, then you're going to end up like some kind of poodle-headed tragedy from the 80s, which, depending on what you ask for, is not always the case. What you're really looking for is a natural style of body and movement in the hair that you can then set into the vintage shapes that you want. So for those of you with naturally curly hair, this means that your hair already wants to start curling in different directions. Having worked with so many clients that have naturally curly hair, I find that there is one big thing that they have in common that is a total no-no when it comes to vintage styling. They don't brush their hair. Now, I can understand that if your hair is quite curly naturally, the idea of brushing it and turning yourself into a huge frizz ball is not a very attractive. Think about the old brush your hair 100 strokes every night. That wasn't just to keep the children entertained, it did actually serve a very important purpose, and this is something that it seems most modern women have forgotten. By brushing your hair, you're looking after the health of your scalp. You're stimulating the natural oils, and the process of brushing is actually working those natural oils down the hair shaft. The more you can do that with your hair, the more under control it becomes. One of the issues that I see in a lot of people with naturally curly hair is that they aim to wash it a couple of times a week but don't brush it or comb it in between, mainly for fear of ending up as a total frizz ball. What you should be doing is actually brushing your hair every night and looking after the health of that. The more that you can work the natural oils through your hair, the better and more manageable those curls will be. If you're able to do that, then you can start setting them into the shape that you want to achieve your vintage styles. For a lot of people that actually have naturally curly hair, by doing this of an evening, you don't necessarily need to do much in the way of setting to get it into a good shape the next day. It's simply going to be a matter of learning how to pin into the style that you want and being able to brush out and work with some kind of pomade or serum to smooth the look that you're after. You'd be amazed what you can actually achieve with naturally curly hair. If you've ever seen a chap with a much shorter haircut who does have naturally curly hair, when you see them brush that into shape, you'll see a pattern appear in the hair that's rather like the Marcel or the finger wave. This is what happens when you brush naturally curly hair together. You'll find that those curls will want to come together into a good pattern. It's just a matter of having the patience to see what you can work with.
tried to find you an image of what I'm talking about, but it's proving to be very difficult. You can see here that wave at the top of the man's hair. It can be achieved with finger waves, but for those with naturally curly hair, this is what happens when it's brushed.
Since my last tutorial that came out last week on the midi cut and how to style it, a lot of you have asked me about the headscarf that I use. It's really, really simple. Something that I've just whipped up at home on the sewing machine and something that you can do too. Some of you have asked me for the pattern. Well, there isn't really a pattern for this, but what I've done is I've shown you the dimensions and the best way to cut this. Even if you don't own a sewing machine and you can't fancy up the edges, you can still just chop one of these out of a piece of cloth. Of course, the fancier the better if you're going to wear it outside, but it really isn't that difficult at all. Have a look.
The best fabric to use for your headscarf will be a pure cotton or perhaps even a linen, something that has good absorbency and breathes well. The long side measures 43 inches or 109.5 centimetres. The other sides measure 28 inches or 71.5 centimetres. The best way to get this exactly right is to simply fold it in half to make your template. When you're cutting, make sure that you've placed that fold on the folded edge of the fabric, and then once you open it, your triangle will be perfect. This is how we finish the edge, just simply a stitch.
Thank you for watching this week's episode of Super Kawaii Mama Says. I hope you've learnt a little something about curly hair and vintage styles, but of course the answer is different for everyone because we all have different hair types. I wish that I could invite you all to the salon here to come and see me and have a one-on-one session so that I can help you with that. Sadly not, but if you leave me a comment or a question here on this video, I'll do my best to try and help you out. Make sure that you subscribe to this channel because I have some absolute cracker tutorials coming out in the next couple of weeks. I'm actually headed over to the Philippines this weekend, so before I leave, I'm making sure that they're all done and ready to go for you. Please make sure to subscribe to this channel for more fantastic vintage and retro hair, makeup and beauty tips, as well as, of course, your weekly episode of Super Kawaii Mama Says. If you haven't already, make sure that you share these and tell your friends about it because the more the merrier, and of course the more questions that we get asked, the more solutions we can give you. Thanks for watching. Bye!